And finally, we're looking at TFCC, short for Transformers Collectors Club, Breakdown. This is a repaint and slight remold of Generations Sideswipe, or Classics Sideswipe. But this, or more, I guess more specifically, this is a repaint of either BotCon, I think it was BotCon, the BotCon G2 Breakdown. But basically it's Sideswipe with a different color scheme and a new head. And never handled this mold before. Also, I say finally, I wanted to clarify this first. I say finally because I do recording in batches, and this is the last video of this batch, which means I finally, once this video is done, can pack up all my filming equipment for another month or so, because I have a lot of videos that I filmed recently. But anyway, Breakdown. This is my first experience with the classic Sideswipe mold, much like United Wheeljack here was my first experience with that mold. And it's been interesting going back to look at a lot of these figures. So Breakdown here is very cool. And again, like the mold is interesting. It is cool in its own right. This was used for like a lot of different figures. I think it was like Red Alert, Punch Counterpunch, Sunstreaker, probably more that I'm not remembering right now. But I like the Stunticons, and I think Breakdown has a cool aesthetic, so I went with this version. Also, because I don't really care that much about, even though I have a couple of Sideswipe figures, I don't care that much about Sideswipe. Definitely don't have any major thoughts about Red Alert. Don't really want to chase down the Punch Counterpunch thing. Sunstreaker, I was thinking about it, but it's just like, I think this is the more appealing way to check out the mold. And yeah, this is a nifty little vehicle. The only thing that bugs me about this is the engine stuff going on up here. But other than that, I dig how well this works. Like, it's not exactly the same kind of car that Breakdown's supposed to be, which I think is completely fine, especially considering the the whole point of Classics was that they were doing things a little bit differently with the figures. So the fact that it's a different car is fine for me. But the coloring here is great. I love that they use this kind of very slightly tan cream color off-white for the plastic, but then has that really nice dark blue going along the base, up along the wheel wells, even like in here. Of course, red trapezoid on the front with the Decepticon logo. The Decepticon logo is a little bit washed out in the red, and it's off-center. I don't mind it being off-center, but it is washed out. That bums me out more than anything. Let's see, silver on the rims, which look good, and around back, a surprising amount of painted detail in here, though because these become the fronts of the knees, it makes sense why they put so much black, silver, and red on the back here, too. But yeah, car mode looks pretty good. I just don't like this piece, and it seems pointless for Breakdown, but the whole thing with this is it's a separate piece, so it just comes off. And this can become kind of an accessory in robot mode. But basically what I'm going to do is once this video is done, I'm going to just toss this in the box with the other stuff that the figure came with and forget that it exists for the rest of time. Because this, I think, looks a lot better for a Breakdown vehicle mode. This is fine, but this is distracting in my mind, and doing it like this, I don't think you lose anything as a Breakdown figure by removing the engine piece, and I just think it looks better this way. So yeah, this is how we're going to be looking at him for the rest, in vehicle mode for the rest of the video. And yeah, it's a good looking car. One of the wheels, it's this one. This wheel is, I think they pushed the pin in too much, so it doesn't really like to spin. And so he does roll, but he rolls a bit weird because this wheel does not want to spin. But other than that, it's still nice and a cool looking figure. So, all right, we've looked at the car. Now let's look at how the car sizes, and it's a deluxe from Classics, so it's not huge, but it's bigger than your average deluxe. All right, get you all out of here and bring in Burnout for a more classics compared to contemporary deluxe. So at first glance, they look to be about the same size. I mean, Burnout is bigger, but it's like the car is longer and a little wider, but it's way shorter. So I feel like they're not too dissimilar in terms of size in vehicle mode. Like if we bring in Wheeljack, Wheeljack's vehicle mode looks bigger than Breakdown's because it kind of is. Because it's just got a wider base. Like it's longer, wider, and actually a little bit taller. So yeah, Wheeljack's vehicle mode is actually bigger than Breakdown's. But there's how they measure up. And then finally, and most importantly, here is Breakdown with the duck tank. Okay, real quick before we transform this into a robot, I've got a coffee, I've got a Patreon, links to both at the end of the video as well as down in the description. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel without money, which I totally get, you could always like, comment, share, subscribe. Any of that stuff is appreciated. Now, let us turn this into a robot. So first thing is, I always forget to do this, so I'm going to do this first. I'm going to take the rear sections here and double hinge these out, because these I always forget to do. But double hinge those out, and also come down here and unplug this piece, because this will become the gun. I always appreciate how these toys hide their weapons away so effectively. Like Wheeljack, his weapon storage is like just amazing. But yeah, so here we go. Oh, also there is the rub sign on the roof there. Look, he's a Decepticon. What do you know? But anyway, okay, so doing that, now comes the tricky part. Because you want to disconnect a bunch of stuff in here. What I end up doing is kind of pulling to disconnect these bits here, and then swinging this panel down and kind of disconnecting it, pulling and disconnecting from here as well, to kind of swing it around like this. It's a little bit tricky to do, and going back into vehicle mode is also a little tricky, but I'm not entirely sure of a better way to do it, because I've seen people say like, oh, you do it this way, but like I can't get it to work that way. Like you can't really move the legs with the arms in place because of how this goes around this, and like you can't slide this out when this is all tabbed together, because this front windshield section kind of tabs in up here, and you can't really get your fingers in to lift this up to untab it. So it's just, yeah, it's a little tricky. Anyway, with these panels rotated down, now we can kind of wiggle this out. So you can see there are these little tabs here that go in here, but they also kind of go down. So you kind of need to pull up and out. These come out, and this whole thing will slide. It should slide more. There we go. So that slides all the way out like that. And this will just stay like that for now. Now we can take this back section, and this will swing all the way back. And now we can, we'll do the legs. So I'm going to rotate this around, make sure that everything is facing the right way for robot mode, untab the obvious legs, and then want to use this little tab thing down here to pull the foot up. And with the foot pulled up, you can rotate it to the side, swing it down, and then rotate it forward. And that will give us a foot. And then this just rotates to the side. And then I like to angle the leg so that it looks straight. But this has a lot of give to it, so you know, something you kind of have to dial in. This foot is a lot more stiff than the other one, which I actually like. I just haven't taken the time to, like, this. I've tightened this screw. There's a screw back here. I've tightened that, and it does not have an effect on this, so I just need to go in with floor polish, I think, to stiffen this up a little bit. But it's not that big a deal. Anyway, this rotates, straighten that out. And there we've got the legs. Breakdown has legs. Okay. Breakdown's got legs. So bit of an adaptation from Monster Squad. Anyway, I want to take this grill piece on the front, flip that up, just because don't want to forget. And now the arms are a little bit tricky to do. Basically, you want to rotate this out. And with this rotated out, there's this little black armature here. Right here, just behind the wheel. You want to rotate that armature in. And I did that off camera. You want to rotate the armature in, not out, but in. And then you can finish rotating the wheel around. Then you want to take that armature and rotate it up. And we can straighten out the arm, rotate this panel around, and if it hasn't already, I can kind of push that in a bit. Now I'm going to show this from a better angle and actually keep it on camera with this arm. So you want to rotate this out, and then take this armature and rotate it into the body. Then you can rotate the wheel all the way around, and then this will rotate. This armature that we rotated in will rotate the rest of the way up and sit kind of against, kind of rotates around like this, and will sit right in here and straighten out the arm, rotate it, and then flip this panel around and slide it in. And now this whole thing, which is now the robot torso, will fold down and click into place to make the torso. And the way the clicking works is, let's zoom back in, there are these little tabs right here, that sit just in front of the wheels, and there are these slots here and here on the midsection. That's what those click into. And they're a little tricky to get lined up. I don't know if this is different on Sideswipe or other versions of the mold, but on this guy, you kind of have to like pull out slightly so that things flex just a little bit to make it easier to slide it in place. But once you slide it in place, it's locked in really effectively, to the point where when you want to take it out, you also kind of want to flex out just a little bit. Again, you're not really flexing plastic, you're more applying pressure to give those tabs just a little bit more room. But yeah, this locks in really nicely. And there we've got the robot mode just about finished. This thing, these feet are a little bit tricky to situate. I definitely need to mess with those feet a bit, I think. Aside from the feet, everything on this guy's actually been pretty secure. And now, the best part of the transformation, for anyone who's not familiar with this transformation, well, this is the best part of it. You take this rear roof section and rotate it 180 degrees, but it's geared so that when you rotate it, the robot mode head pops up. And that is extremely cool. It does, like, I do wish this had some way to kind of lock in. I don't believe it does. I haven't been able to figure anything out. But I also think that's fine. Like, you can, if you nudge this while moving the figure, it will make the head sink a bit, but like, just rotate it back. And there is Breakdown as a robot, and this is a pretty cool breakdown, honestly. It's a departure, yes, but that's kind of the point of classics. And I'm all for departures, because I've said many times I'm kind of over the whole let's make it like G1 thing, because it's just being done so much these days that I'm just really kind of sick of it. So something like this, where it's, I think, identifiably Breakdown because of the colors and because of just particularly the way they did the red on the hood. I feel like this is very much Breakdown, and it looks cool, but it's also different, and I absolutely respect different. He is a bit bell-bottomy with the proportions, but like, that's just how the figure is designed, and I don't mind it. As I said, it's different. What is kind of funny to me, though, is the way that the legs come together. It almost seems like this would work better as Dead End, but I'm fine with Breakdown. I like Breakdown's whole thing with like the white or the off-whites and the blue and the reds, so I'm cool with that. But it would have been interesting to see it as dead end too. But yeah, he looks good. He is, pretty darn clean. He does have some kibble, like he's got the backs of the car as his knees, but that seems like more of a design choice than kibble. And if it is, it is kibble, but like I kind of enjoy how brazen it is to just have it right up front. I kind of wish this had a more specific way to lock in because it's just on a ball joint, but I end up just situating it so that it rests against the wheel, and this keeps it from rotating. It's at a bit of an angle, but I don't mind it. Also, you've got these panels here, which surprisingly don't get in the way as much as you'd think for articulation. But that's kind of it. Of course, could levy the complaint, or not complaint, but criticism of people who complain about hollowness, about how, figures are so hollow now. They were so much better back in Henkei and Classics, or other times. It's like, look at this. This is double dealer level openings on the insides of the legs, but it's fine. Like, it really is fine. It's just, it always and forever will irritate me when people say, oh, it was better when, and it's like, it really wasn't. This has existed for a long time. Even G1 figures had hollowness. But anyway, yeah, he looks really good. The colors here are great. I love the breakup now where you've got like the white of the car has almost, like, with the exception of the shoulders, the white of the car is basically almost like he's wearing armor, which I think is cool. The hood chest looks really good. I also do enjoy how now that this detail is revealed, you get this silver and blue added to it, which is neat. It would have worked to have a Decepticon logo up here, but also it's breakdown. He's supposed to have a Decepticon logo on the hood, which is off center, but like, I get not having two. I don't even mind it being off center or being on his stomach. It kind of mixes things up a bit, but again, it just looks washed out on that red. I think they could have used a purple that stood out a little bit better. But yeah, it's a neat mold. I like it. I just have a couple of small gripes with the way that, like, primarily my gripes are with the way the feet are handled, because they don't lock in at all. So like, you can, like, especially this one being super loose, it just doesn't lock in. I wish they locked in, but they don't. And that makes using the ankle tilts and getting him to stand a little bit tricky, but I just need to tighten that up. I think I'll be fine. But he's cool. Also, for some reason, I really like that they painted these little vent things on the thighs black. I just think that's neat. But yeah, very cool figure. Very nice color breakup between the black, white, and blue, blue and black, white, red, purple, silver, blue, white, black, blue, white, or off. I say white, it's off white, but it's a cool figure. I like how it all comes together, and I was surprised by how sturdy it all is. Like, looking at videos of this guy, I was kind of expecting things to not hold together super well, but they actually do. Like, this little armature back here tends to move when I'm trying to move the arm, and this one stays in place without wiggling at all. So that's a little bit annoying, but like, it's very minimal. But like, that's kind of it. I don't know, for some reason I was expecting that like things on this guy just wouldn't hold together or hold into position as well as I wanted, but when I got him, things are, for the most part, pretty tight. The only stuff I had to tighten was like, I just tightened some screws on the on this ankle, which is nice and solid, and I tried it on this one, it didn't work, and I tightened the screws up here so that pivot to transform wouldn't become like an impromptu ankle tilt. But like, that was just tightening screws. I didn't even have to do anything beyond that. So yeah, it's really solid, looks cool. I like him. Now, Breakdown's head. This admittedly did throw me off at first. So I was looking at this like, well, that's weird for Breakdown's head. The dark red is like, it's a little bit too maroony, it's a little too dark. The bright red visor is weird. Like, why does he have a visor? It's breakdown. The head is so square and boxy. And I was just looking at it like, why did they do this? And then it, of course, hit me. The entire point of the head being like this is it's supposed to look like the G1 toy, because the G1 toy's head was just a combiner piece. And it would, was designed to be this square shape so that it would wedge into the combiner ports on Motormaster's leg / shoulder, depending on what you wanted to use breakdown as. So it's like, okay, I actually really appreciate how this is a G1, a very G1 inspired head. I do think the dark purpley, like the dark maroon color that they used for the face, it doesn't stand out as much as I'd like against the dark blue for the head and the red that they chose for the visor. I think something should have brightened up a bit. Like maybe use a slightly brighter red on the visor, but does match the red down here. Like, I don't know. Just something with the face deco, I think, could have helped it pop a little bit more. But like, it still does look good, and the sculpting is really interesting. And I do, once I got it, I do enjoy the G1 homage. I think that's pretty cool. Now for articulation. The head is on a ball joint, so it does rotate all the way around. It can look up a bit and look down a bit and kinda tilt. And if you wanted to, you could rotate this to make him go turtle mode, I guess. Or this could be his G1 Ironhide / Ratchet cosplay. I don't know. But you got that. You got ball jointed shoulders that go out. The outward motion is very limited on these arms. That does stink. Like, that's as far out as they're going to go. You can't even really get any further out going this way if you line up with that strut. It's just that's as far out as the arms go. Oh well. But they're on a ball joint, so you can kind of use that as a pseudo butterfly, and you can also use the wheel rotation as a pseudo butterfly, but it only goes so far. It can go all the way around. You do have bicep rotation. This panel can get in the way of the bicep rotation, but you can also kind of work it around in other ways to get around it. You can also slide this out to give you more clearance. So you've got options. But yeah, that panel can get in the way of the bicep rotation and some other articulation as well. But again, like, you can work around it. There's the full bicep rotation. You get we'll flip this down so you can actually see the joint. You get a double jointed elbow, and it can bend pretty darn far. It's not entirely 180, but that is a lot of elbow bend. And I guess if you wanted to, you could bend it back the other way as well. This piece, as I said, can rotate here. It can rotate here. So if you wanted to, you could rotate it to the back or leave it to the side. I guess you could rotate it to the inside if you really wanted to do that too. But you got options there. And this, I believe there are people who like doing it this way, and that's fine. But yeah, that's I just leave it there. The fists also do rotate separately, independently of all the other stuff. The waist also rotates. It doesn't rotate a lot until it crashes into what's going on back here, but this roof section is actually on a hinge, and it's not like significant, but you can pull it up just a little bit. Though it does seem to be flexing up here, so maybe that's not intentional, but it does, on this one at least, it does move up a bit, so I think you can get a little bit more waist rotation out of it. The hips are on ball joints. They can go forward about that far, though you can go out further to bring them up further. You can go back about that far. If that is up and out of the way, they can go back a little further. You can go out that far, so the outward motion is not as restricted as the shoulders, but still restricted. You get rotation just above the knee, thank goodness. And the knee can bend to 90. If you wanted to, you could use that transformation joint. If you wanted to, I guess if you wanted to, you could also reorient the legs, but that would look weird. I guess you could do it this way and rotate the waist around, and that gives you a different design for the legs. They probably did something like this for punch counter punch. Of course, if you do it this way, no, you can still use that as a knee. So yeah, you've got leg options. And then for the feet, they are on that hinge, not hinge, this swivel here that is way too loose on this side, but you also get a ball joint at the foot, so you can point it down, move it up, and independently of the swivel, you can actually rock it back and forth and rotate it. So pretty surprisingly decent articulation, especially in the feet for a figure of this this era, which is pretty cool. Okay, now for the accessories that this guy comes with. Oh, we need to recenter this camera. For the accessories, the engine block thing, you can just attach that back here. There are these big tab sections on the hood or on the roof rather, and these so these tabs in the front here are what tabbed into what have now become the legs for vehicle mode. These tabs towards the back will tab in here, and that will tab in, and the big tabs just kind of sit over top there, and that stores the engine piece behind the head. It's not intrusive, which is good. Also, if you want, you can store them here using the tabs in the front, but this is more for the Sunstreaker mold, because with Sunstreaker, he transforms basically this way with everything facing this direction. And I guess if you wanted to, you could do something similar for Breakdown, but I think it looks better with the hood chest. But you could do that. I'm clearly not a fan of doing it that way for Breakdown, but the option does exist. And then there is the gun, which is a pretty decently molded little pistol. I'm sure it's not accurate to the G1 figure, but I don't care. And what you can do with this is you basically fold down these little blue pieces, and these are supposed to go around I think they're supposed to go around the edges of the gun here, and it just doesn't really work. Like, I can kind of get it to sort of tuck in a bit, but it doesn't like to stay that way, and it's not straight. And if I try to straighten it out, then it doesn't want to stay together. Like, this is just holding on by a prayer. Like, it's just not, it's not good. It's not good. This was a poorly designed thing. I feel like all they had to do was maybe add little tabs to the outside of the sides of the gun here. Just a couple little tabs that could easily tuck inside there and just help to keep things locked together and straight. But nope, didn't do that. And you can't wrap them around the end of the gun because it's just not built for that. I guess you could also go this way if you wanted to, which isn't really any better. And yeah, this just doesn't look good. It doesn't hold together, and I don't like it, as I think I've made abundantly clear. This isn't great. It's more than anything, like, I wouldn't even mind doing this if it weren't for the fact that it doesn't hold together. Because, like, I'm going to try, like, you could see it's not straight, but I'm still going to try to put it in his hand. And we'll see if the piece stays on. Okay, the piece actually did stay on. Well, that's good. But yeah, I don't really like how that looks. I think it makes the gun look silly. So I just don't do it. I prefer to keep it simple. Just keep the gun like this. And I mean, I appreciate that you have the option. And anyone who gets this guy or any version of this mold will have that option themselves. So, like, y'all can do whatever you want with it. For me, though, as I said, because I feel like the vehicle mode is stronger without this whole thing is just going to stay in the box now, and this is going to be everything that I use with Breakdown from now on. Just going to keep it to the basic gun, leave it at that. But yeah, gripes with the engine piece aside, is this a really cool figure? The articulation is a little bit dated in just like the outward motion on the legs and on the hips and shoulders, but like other than that, it's pretty cool, pretty solid. I appreciate the classics, no pun intended. And let's do our size comparison now. So here is Dinobot. There we go. And Ova Prime. And Burnout. And Samus, just because. And he is a pretty sizable deluxe. Like, the vehicle was a little bit smaller, I guess, than... Well, I mean, definitely smaller than Wheeljack, but like the vehicle made him look almost the same size as Burnout, but then like height-wise, after transformation, he is noticeably taller. He's more in like tall deluxe, short Voyager height. So, yeah, he is a pretty... I mean, he's a classics, or... yeah, he's a classics figure, so of course he's going to be taller than... a modern one. And then, since we looked at it before, we'll bring back United Wheeljack. And Wheeljack is, I think, something of an anomaly for the line in that the vehicle mode was rather big and the robot mode ends up being kind of stout. Part of it is because the legs don't extend as far as they do for the Trax mold. But I feel like they don't extend... I don't own Trax or a version of Trax, but I feel like the legs couldn't possibly extend enough to make his head line up with Breakdown here, because that would... Like, I just don't think that would work. Maybe it does, but I don't think so. I think he's probably still shorter. But yeah, here's how the two of them look together. It is kind of funny to me how the smaller vehicle ends up being the taller robot, but, you know, that's just how they did the engineering. But aesthetics-wise, I think they both look really good together. Like, I don't know, just stuff from that era. It hits a certain way. And finally, and most importantly, as always, here is Breakdown with the duck tank. And that does it for TFCC Breakdown. As I said, it's my first experience with this mold, and I do like it. I have no interest in collecting multiples of the mold, just like I have no interest in collecting multiples of the Trax/Wheeljack mold. But I like having a version of it representing a character that I enjoy having that representation for. Because I'm not attached to Breakdown as a character, I'm not attached to Wheeljack as a character, but I like the Stunticons. I think Wheeljack looks neat. So, like, I like having those figures. I would go as far as to say this is actually more solid than Wheeljack, because Wheeljack's torso slider thing isn't as solid as I would like, whereas with the Sideswipe, or Breakdown/Sideswipe mold, the only thing you have to worry about is the rotational thing in the back, and that's not too hard to not mess around with. And like all of his other restrictions, like or not restrictions, but all of his other kibble stuff, like the panels on the arms, panels on the knees, those can all be worked around and accommodated, and they don't change the fundamental shape of the robot. Also, they tend to stay in place better than Wheeljack's slider thing. But point is, I like this. He looks really cool. The proportions are interesting because the torso is gigantic, but like, or chest is gigantic, but like he's cool. He's very cool. I'm glad I have this. I'm glad I have a version of the mold, and I'm glad it's Breakdown. But that is enough about what I think. What do you all think of this figure or this mold in one of its many, many iterations? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you everybody for watching. I don't know what the next video is, but I do know once I stop recording, I'm going to pack all of this filming equipment up and have myself some leftover quesadillas for lunch.